Australia is a country built on trade, but without trade, Australia would die. These days, many people invest in things that are concepts, not assets. People think that you can do everything yourself when it comes to investing, right? So you read a book, or you go on Instagram, or you get some stock tip from your friend, and you can do it all yourself. In investing, it's not just about numbers, it's about relationship. Who can you trust? What can you trust? If it's too good to be true, it's likely to be true. If someone tells you this investment can make you 5 times your money in 2 months, it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. The more complex the investment structure, the more likely it is to fail. Wisdom is knowing when to walk away. If you don't understand, you don't invest. Welcome everyone again to our 4th part of the seminar on wealth, and we are glad that you can join us again. Everyone's here. It's cold outside, but it's warmer in here. And I hope you're excited, because tonight's the one that I think most people think about when they think about money and wealth. And so we're going to talk a little bit about wanting to have funds, wealth, fun and funds. Investing is the topic for tonight. Some people are scared when you hear this word. How many of you are scared of investing? Okay, there's a few. How many of you are excited? Okay, how many of you get anxiety when you think about it? Okay, a few. How many of you are exhilarated? Very passionate about it. Some. So the question is, where do we even start? That's what we're going to cover tonight. As usual, we'll just make sure that this thing is working. 1 second. All right. So this is not financial advice. I just remind you again. So especially for tonight, right? Many people, when they think about investing, they always want to have financial advice. This is not financial advice. And again, just reminded that all the resources, the recordings, the information are all online on the NAS community. So if you haven't been able to attend any of the seminars so far, you can find the recordings, resources, audio, podcast version, a 2-page summary, any version of the recording that you want. It's all online. And what I want to tell you a little bit about, so this is how you access it. You might have not, if you haven't already seen it, but just to give you a preview, next seminar is on the 11th of July. That'll be the last of our 5-part series. So that's Living on Borrowed Time. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. But then we have some special things happening in late July, early August. Okay, so I'm going to review all about that towards the end of the presentation. So let's start. Investing can be scary, can be exciting, can be anxiety-provoking. When I put the word invest into a word cloud, you can see that all sorts of words come out. Okay, and some of these words may mean more to you than others, especially if you've had experience in this area or you're passionate about this area. So people, when they talk about investing, they talk about business, they talk about assets, they talk about strategies, they talk about income, they talk about risk, they talk about funds, they talk about growth, they talk about all sorts of things. For most people, when they think of investing, they just think about the word being rich. Yeah? Because how many of you want to invest to be poor? Anyone? Oh, we have one at the back. No. Okay. How many of you, no one comes into investing, generally speaking, hoping to lose money or hoping to lose their wealth. They come into investing hoping to gain wealth. And so if you've followed part of our series so far, you remember that we've been covering these buckets one by one. We talked about income coming in. Remember the earning and spending and saving? We talk about earning, spending, saving. And so tonight we're going to look at this third bucket. Preview for next seminar, we're going to look at the last one. I'll leave that alone for now. But tonight we're going to look at this third bucket. What you earn, what you spend, what you save. Tonight is what you invest. I'm going to start off with a question. How many of you know, don't say it out loud, okay? How many of you know which country this flag belongs to? Okay, what? Oh, okay. All right. How many? This is not geography. You come to the right place. This is a finance series. How many of you think this country is in South America? Asia? Africa? Europe? Yeah. Australia? No? Or Oceania? No? Okay, anyone want to tell me what it is? Lebanon. This is the flag of Lebanon. Now, Lebanon is a very interesting flag because it's one of the few flags in the world of a country that actually has a motif or a symbol. That's the first thing. And the motif or the symbol is actually a plant. If you think about it, many countries have a national flower or a national plant, but it's not on the flag, right? So I was born in Singapore. Singapore's national flower is the purple orchid. Now, I don't know, there's a special name for the orchid, but it's not on the flag. But if someone asks you what's the national flower of Australia, anyone know? Or the one on the coat of arms? Sorry? Golden wattle, yeah. So if you go to a citizenship ceremony, they often give you a little bit of wattle, or they give you a wattle tree, right? You know. So if you drive around here, there's a road called Wattle Tree Road. Wattle is the plant. But very few countries have a plant on their flag. Yeah? Can you think of another country that has a plant on their flag?
Canada.
Sorry?
Canada.
Yeah.
Macau.
Sorry? Macau.
New Zealand wants to.
Yeah, New Zealand wants to have a, yeah. So it's rare, right? It must be something that really symbolizes something of great importance in their country. Lebanon has a cedar tree. This is the real life cedar tree. This is the flag cedar tree, okay? If you look at Wikipedia or a dictionary or an encyclopedia, they'll tell you that the cedars of Lebanon are world famous. Maybe not these days. If you think of Lebanon, you think of Lebanese bread or food or something like this, right? Especially in Melbourne, we have good Lebanese restaurants. But the cedar of Lebanon or the cedars of Lebanon are well known. This comes all the way back in ancient times. I'm going to give you an idea of where this comes from, okay? This is a story about Solomon. We've been looking at the story of Solomon the last few seminars. Here we go. So give orders that cedars of Lebanon be cut for me. This is Solomon speaking. My men will work with yours, and I will pay you for your men whatever wages you set. You know that we have no one so skilled in felling timber as the Sidonians. The Lebanese people were famous for being really good woodwork people because the trees that grow in Lebanon were so popular and so prized that they became something that was prized by people from other countries. You know, when you go to a country and you buy a souvenir that's prized and you can only find it in that country, this is what happened in Lebanon. So Solomon, when he was building a temple, you would have heard of the famous temple in Jerusalem that Solomon built. He wanted the best wood in the world. And so he went to Lebanon. And this is what happened. Hiram was the king of Lebanon at the time. Solomon sent him the message. This is the message that Solomon sent him, right? Please excuse me, I would like to buy some trees, some wood. Please have your skillful men cut the trees down and send them down. You know, in those days, there's no truck, there's no donkey to pull the trees. So what they did was they cut the tree and then they would float the wood down the river all the way to where the temple was being built. It's a long ride to float trees down rivers. And so Solomon says, or Hiram, the king of Lebanon says, oh, that's great, because David has a wise son to rule over this great nation. They're making a trade here. This is the temple, or a mock-up of a temple. And where the cedars of Lebanon were used were to form the pitch of the roof. So they were the beams that formed the roof of the temple, the famous temple in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, this building is now destroyed. If you go to Israel, you'll be able to see part of the wall, but you won't be able to see this temple. But this was the prized building. Imagine the most expensive and famous building in the world. Now, some of you would have gone to places across the world where you see very popular, famous buildings. An example of that, the Colosseum in Rome, the Sistine Chapel, the big cathedral in Barcelona, the one that's been built for over hundreds and hundreds of years. There are famous buildings all around the world. This was one of the most famous buildings, and the thing that was chosen was the cedars of Lebanon. Hiram, the king, sent word, I've received the message you sent me, and I will do everything you want. I will provide the cedar and juniper. So here we go. Here's the story. My men will cut them down from Lebanon and float them to the Mediterranean Sea, and they put them on rafts just to the place you specify, and I will separate them, and you can take them away, and you are to grant my wish by providing food for my royal household. This is one of the first investments that Solomon made outside his country. Many of the things that made up Solomon's wealth were gained from inside. This was trade. Now, if all of you who follow the news, you will know that trade is a big topic in today's news, right? For the last few weeks and months, there's been all this discussion around the concept of trade. People stopping other people from buying things, people putting tariffs on things, people stopping exports and imports or competition. This was one of the first investments that Solomon made. In this way, Hiram kept Solomon supplied with all the cedar and juniper logs he wanted, and Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cores of wheat as food for his household, in addition to 20,000 baths of pressed olive oil. So this is trade relationships here. What is he buying? He's buying wood using food. So if you think about it, Australia is a country built on trade. Australia alone, unfortunately, I don't mean to burst your bubble, but without trade, Australia would die. We export a lot of things. We export a lot of primary industry. For example, we export coal and iron ore to Asia, right? We export gas for people to use to heat up their homes. We export a lot of things in Australia. This is trade. Solomon continued to do this for Hiram year after year. The Lord gave Solomon wisdom just as he had promised. There were peaceful relationships between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty. Because of this relationship and this investment, one of Solomon's best friends was Lebanon. Lebanon and Israel never went to war. In those days, war was a big thing, right? You don't like each other, I'll fight you, and then I'm going to take over, I'll conquer you, and then you have to pay me a tribute. So this was the cornerstone, Solomon's investment, looking at the cedars of Lebanon, wanting the best wood for the temple, was how he approached investing. So I'm going to give you 4 things that Solomon did. This is the just ignore the title, I think it came up wrong on the slide, but look at the 4 components or the 4 things that Solomon did in terms of being able to invest and how he went about his investments. The first one is, Solomon, if you look at all his investing history, focused on tangible assets: gold, silver, land, transportation, and livestock. All the things he invests in are often assets. These days, many people invest in things that are concepts, not assets. That's an important thing to think about. Okay, I'll come to that later on. Number 2, he leveraged resources. He knew that the best people to chop wood came from Lebanon. He didn't go and expect that his carpenters would go, or what do they call them? Wood choppers? Would go to Lebanon and do the work, because he trusted that the resources and the skill sets from other people are the best. Now, sometimes when it comes to investing, I'm just going to throw things out here and I'll bring them together as we go through the seminar today. People think that you can do everything yourself when it comes to investing, right? So you read a book, or you go on Instagram, or you get some stock tip from your friend, and you can do it all yourself. Solomon was very smart. Even though he was wise, the wisdom led him to leverage his resources and skill sets. He knows that he has wheat and olive oil, and he can trade it for the wood. Number 3, in investing, it's not just about numbers, it's about relationships. Who can you trust? What can you trust? Number 4, his investments were based around purposeful interests. Solomon was interested in building the things that were purposeful in his life. The temple was not actually for Solomon. It's not like he's building his mansion. For him, Solomon was building a temple for his faith. That was a temple that the Jewish people used to worship their God. And so Solomon's investments is not only just for himself, it has a purpose behind it. Now, many times, we think of this as only investing in terms of tangible money. But if I want you to think about it, if you put any of these 4 things in place, you could be talking about investing in anything. I'm going to give you an example. Investing in your health. That's a tangible asset, isn't it? Does it need you to leverage your resources and skills? Right? If you are wanting to build your muscles, you go and ask a personal trainer who has some skills that you may not have. Number 3, it's about relationships, isn't it? When you're going to the gym, it's always nicer to go with someone else, or someone that you trust, that someone that you know can help you to achieve your goals, who can keep you accountable. And number 4 is it's often purposeful. You go there, most of the time people go to the gym, half of it is exercise, half of it is the social component, right? You talk to your friends, you have your gym buddy, or you have your running friend. Those are all the components. And so investment, actually, the principles apply, even though tonight we're talking about investing in terms of monetary assets. It can be equally applied to any type of thing you want to invest in. So I've done the simplified version, okay? I'm not Solomon, I'm not as smart as him. So I've just summarized and simplified it for you. Now, I'm sorry it's a little bit small, but I'll read it out for you. So I've called it the PREV Investing Framework, just to make it easy for you. These are the questions that I'm hoping for you to be able to grapple and wrestle with as we walk through investing. And we're going to test it tonight, okay? So number 1, P stands for alignment with purpose. P is purpose. R stands for risk assessment or risk. E stands for effectiveness, analyzing how effective it is. V stands for value consideration. Okay, repeat that again. Purpose, risk assessment, effectiveness, and value. So I'm going to do an exercise, very simple. You can do it maybe in groups of 3 or 4, just as a discussion. And then we'll bring it back together, okay? We'll do it first. I'll do the rest of the talking, and then we'll do it again because it helps you to just put this into your mind. I want you to imagine that you are evaluating, maybe it's not imagine, maybe it's real. I want you to imagine you want to invest in a house. Okay? In a house. Now, I assume most of us here, at least conceptually, would like to invest in a house, even if it's a lot of money. I would like you to, in your little groups, you can make groups of 3 or 4 where you're seated now, to just work through this framework without me telling you anything. Okay? Just interpret what you think this means on the screen, and then we're going to go through it together. Okay? So just use the asset class, or the type of investment, property, a house, and work through these questions to see whether or not it makes sense. You can put it out there, you can discuss it, you can write some things down, you can jot some things down on your phone. For some of you, you already have gone through these questions because you already have a house. For some of you who don't have a house, maybe you've already gone through the questions and you realize you can't buy a house. But what I want you to do is just work through it, because then as the more we go through this framework, the easier it becomes to evaluate the wisdom around investment. Okay? Make sense? So just cluster around. I'll give you about 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. Chat with your neighbor, talk to the person behind you, in front of you. See whether you can apply these questions, and I'll bring everyone back together. You're right. We mentioned that in an earlier webinar. In Australia, property is a big thing. It's almost an expectation. I think I wouldn't even call it a dream. It's expectation that you buy a house, which is why people are so angry when they can't buy a house, right? If it's not an expectation, people don't get angry. But you see in the newspaper, people are complaining about house prices because they expect that they should be able to afford a house. Back in the 1980s, my dad can afford a house. Now, in 2025, I can't, etc. All right, so we're going to go through this. But in your mind, some of you who are familiar with investing, you already know the asset classes that you may be interested in. These questions can apply to it. For those of you who are new to investing, just think of house as a very classic example. Another example is a car or some other thing that you want to invest in. Okay? And then for those of you who are thinking about things that are other than money, you can think about health as an example. Actually, relationships is a really interesting one. The framework still applies. I'll talk about that another day. It's another seminar, not today's seminar. This is one of the most famous investors in history, at least in the modern generation. His name is Warren Buffett. He's about to retire. You know how old he is? 90. Yeah, he's 90 plus and he's still investing. He has so much money, this guy, but he has made, they call him the Oracle of Omaha. Every year, he comes from not a small town, like a rural town in Midwest North America, and he has like an investment conference, and people make a pilgrimage almost to that conference to listen to the conversations and the advice and the sage advice that he gives. So when it comes to this concept of understanding an investment, he's very particular about it. Warren Buffett is very keen or very specific about understanding every investment that he makes. If he doesn't understand the company or the asset class, he doesn't invest. So these are the types of questions that you would ask yourself, okay? How does whatever you want to invest in make money? Number 2, how does it lose money? Number 3, what are the costs and fees involved in investing in that particular group or thing? Number 4, how is it regulated or governed? All right? So the most easy example of this in modern day times is Bitcoin. Or cryptocurrency. It's a very easy expression. This is not a seminar about specific asset classes. I'm just giving you an example of what to think about. How many of you could say, don't raise your hand, could say you understand how cryptocurrency makes money? How many of you could say you understand how I understand how people lose money on cryptocurrency, but how does this, sorry? Yeah. How many of you understand the costs and fees involved in cryptocurrency, and how many of you would understand the regulation and the governance? So if you don't, Warren Buffett would say, if you don't and can't answer these 4 questions, don't invest in that class. Similarly, it's also an interesting thing when you think about something that is not money related. If you don't understand what you're getting yourself into, and you don't understand how it works, do you think it's a wise thing to do? If you're trying to do DIY around the house, I know some of you guys are DIY guys, you understand what to do, but if you don't understand, they often say don't try it because you may hurt yourself, right? Don't try this at home. This was done by people who are skilled actors and skilled people who understand what they're doing. So number 1, understand what your investment is. Here's another way of looking at it. Here are some 4 tips. Number 1, if it's too good to be true, it's likely to be true. If someone tells you this investment can make you 5 times your money in 2 months, it sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. Okay? I wouldn't go as far as saying that everything is a Ponzi scheme, but you just got to be careful and wise. Number 2, simple is better than complex. The more complex the investment structure, the more likely it is to fail. Right? That's a general thing about life. The more complex it is, the more hard it is to understand. And the more hard it is to understand, the more likely it's going to confuse you or fail. Number 3, wisdom is knowing when to walk away. When it comes to everything in life, now you see why I say that investment is not just about money. Gambling, this is a major problem in addiction and gambling. It's not about the money that they put in, because you start gambling with $2. You know, when I was in Las Vegas for a conference, it's just fascinating to watch people's behavior. And when people's behavior in Las Vegas is, I find it so weird. It's a very unusual place. But most people in Las Vegas are not gambling their life savings away. They're not like go there and they sit at a table and they bring $1 million and say, okay, let's put it all on the poker table. But what they're actually doing is they're playing with their machine, you know, the slot machine. And the slot machine is like $2 a time. It's not very much money. It's a very small amount of money. But the problem is they don't know when to walk away. You start there at 9 a.m. and at 9 p.m. they're still there because it's just again and again. And so that's the challenge with investing. Often what happens is when it goes up, wow, this is great. Okay, it's going to go up even more, so I'm not going to sell this thing. And then it goes down by 20%. Oh no, I'm losing 20%. But I need it to go up again, so I better stay because it's going to go up again. And then it goes up a bit more. Oh, great, it's going up. Oh, it's going to go up. I'm not going to sell because, and then it drops another 50%. So, and this is what happens. The wisdom is knowing when to walk away. Number 4, if you don't understand, you don't invest. Very simple. So that's the first component, understanding. The second component of it is, does the purpose, I'll go back to the graph, is it in line with my values? Now, this is an important one. Now you can see why in seminar part 1, 2, and 3, we talk so much about purpose and values. Because investing is a reflection of how you are and who you think. I'll give you a very easy example. I have some Muslim colleagues and friends who will only invest in certain types of products. In fact, in their faith system, they have certain investment products that have been set up specifically so that they can easily adhere to their faith. They have investment funds that only invest in things that are in line with the Muslim faith. So it's easy for them, okay? So for them, it's easy because it's in line, generally speaking, with their values. In Australia, in the Western world, there has been a move over the last few years towards something called ESG. So for those of you who are more familiar with this may be a bit of repetition. For those of you who are not, ESG stands for? Anyone know? Sorry, I gave you the answers here. Environment, social, and governance. In other words, ESG-related investments are supposed to adhere to some sort of value system. And the value system, generally speaking, is good for the environment, is socially responsible, and it also has good governance. So I'm sorry the words are a bit small here, but I'll give you some examples. It focuses on groups or companies or investments that promote climate stability, promotes saving natural resources, promotes good waste management, promotes innovation. It's socially responsible, it is good for society, there's diversity involved, there's value chain renewal. In terms of governance, it's anti-corruption, anti-bribery, there's transparency. So if you look in the stock market, this is the most easy way of looking at it. There are companies who will have an ESG score, and in fact, they even hire people to work in the company to justify why that company is ESG. They get certification, B Corp company is an example of an ESG company. So ESG certification to be able to justify that they are part of some value set. And so to simplify it for most people, if you go to your super account and you look at the types of investments, you can actually now choose ESG related investments. If any of you have tried to do that, they'll call it sustainable or ESG compliant. So what you will see is that most of these types of investments will not have things to do with war, to do with gambling, to do with pornography, to do with anything that could be justified as corruption, etc. in them. Those types of companies that focus on those things are not included in these investment portfolios. Unfortunately, they can also be gamed. ESG is a nice term that maybe people say, oh yeah, if it's an ESG company, yeah, no problems, it's in line with my values. But there's this concept called greenwashing. So some of you will be aware of this. And basically, companies artificially inflate their ESG score to look like they're good corporate citizens when actually behind the scenes, there are all sorts of things that go wrong. I'm not going to name companies here, but you get the concept of what I'm trying to say, that going out there is not necessarily, just because they have an ESG label doesn't mean that they necessarily fit a specific set of values. What I would encourage you to do is to think about what your values are, and where possible, pick investments that line up with your values. The richer you are, the more able you are to do this. I think that's just the reality. And this is an example of that. Now, whether you like this guy or not, this is not a discussion for tonight. But what we do know is that most recently, this is May this year, just about a month ago, Bill Gates came out to make a public pledge that he would give away more than 200 billion, close to 99% of his wealth over the next 20 years. Because he's clearly retired and he's going to realize that he's going to pass soon. He doesn't want to hoard the 200 billion for himself. He's going to give it all. So for him, what he does, if you read the whole article and you go and listen about this, he has his own foundation, Gates Foundation. And the Gates Foundation actually supplies specific things that are of value to him. He has given a lot of money to try and solve malaria, to try and solve AIDS, to try and solve TB. These are things that he's passionate about. I'm not saying that everyone should be passionate about those things, but for Bill Gates, he's very clear what his purpose is. So for him, investing and giving away his money, investing his own resources with no expected return, fulfills his purpose. For most of us, we would only do it if we can get some return. But for him, the return is seeing that malaria has been cured or that cancer has been cured. And so I would encourage you that it's not just don't wait till you're Bill Gates to start thinking about your purpose and values, because what you can do now is start to think about how your investments line up. Because investments is not just about money. How you spend your time, how you spend your energy, how you spend your resources, whatever they may be, monetary or otherwise, are just as important. If you don't understand it and doesn't line up with your values, think twice. Okay, so that's P, yeah? Do I understand what I'm investing in? Is it in line with my values? Here's the next one, risk. We're going to look at, is the investment sure or speculative, and is it within acceptable risk? So most people tread this line between risk and return. The higher the risk, the higher the return is generally the word when you come to investment. In other words, if you are able to accept more risk, you are expecting that it's going to be doing better. If you want low risk, you just hide your money in a cupboard, there will be no return. Yeah? Unfortunately, most investments do this. If they don't do it in real life in terms of their value, they do it to people's anxiety levels. Yeah? It goes like this. When things are going well, you can sleep at night. When things are not going well, you can't sleep at night. And your whole life starts to revolve if you take risks in this. I'm not a roller coaster person, just saying. I don't know, some of you maybe are. You have a higher risk tolerance than I do. But if your investments continue to go up and down like this in a volatile fashion, they can not only be detrimental, but also detrimental to your health, right? So you just got to think about what that is. This is an example of a risk pyramid. There's different types of things. Things at the bottom are least risk. Things at the top, high risk. So the higher the risk, the higher the return. The lower the risk, generally speaking, the lower the return. So an example here, I'm sorry, again, the font is a bit small. Bank accounts are generally speaking lower risk. If you put your money into one of the big 4 banks in Australia, generally speaking, it's fairly low risk. If you need your money, you can go to the ATM and take it out. Yeah? If you don't need it, you can leave it in there. But something like a speculative stock is high risk because you're speculating that it will grow and other things, so on and so forth. These are just different asset classes, but just understanding. Now, I want you to be understanding that there is risk in everything in life. Nothing in life is no risk when it comes to investment. There is a risk. And the question is, what level of risk are you willing to accept and sleep with at night? It's the same thing, right? Every relationship has a risk. There's a risk it could go bad. What level would you be willing to accept? So I'm going to give you an example of some things that are a little bit risky, okay? I'll leave cryptocurrency alone, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the concept of a bubble. Anyone know what a bubble is? Not the bubbles we play with, when I'm in the hospital looking after my patients. But a bubble, when it comes to talking about investment, generally talks about a period of time or an investment period or investment type that is doing really, really well, and so everything's insulated in a bubble until it pops. And when it pops, the whole thing goes chaotic. This word or this description came from one of the first bubbles in history. Anyone know what this flower is? We're talking about plants a lot tonight. Tulip. Where are tulips from originally? From the Netherlands. Anyone been to the Netherlands to see the tulips? Yeah, you've been. If you've been there, it's actually really nice. The tulips are nice. There's a big farm underneath the windmills, and you can see all these tulips. Now, back in the 1600s, okay, this is not even like, this is not just talking about 2020 or 1985. We're talking about 1600. They used to trade tulips. So Solomon used to trade wood, and in 1600s they used to trade tulips. Now I want you to just follow the kind of pattern here. In November 12, the tulip price in 1636 was let's call it $25. Okay, I don't know what exactly it is then, let's call it $25. By November 25, because of the speculation behind the tulips, there was a tulip craze. Okay, like Lego craze, Pokemon card craze, tulip craze. I know you guys laugh, who is going to buy tulip? But they were. Tulips were a status symbol. Like the Labubu doll. Tulips are a status symbol. November 12 to November 25, in 2 weeks, the price of tulips went up how much? 4 times, 25 to 100. By December 12, 1 month later, they were $150 when they were 25. And February 3, they peaked at almost $200. That is almost 10 times in how many months? 3 months. Now, if you are an investor, you start here, you sell here, wow. You put your whole house worth of money, all your life savings, $100,000 on the tulip at $25, and you sell it, except no one ever does that. Because when you're here, remember, it's going to go up to $300. And then when it starts to drop, you're like, nah, we wait for it to go back up. Except that on May 1, it's back at $25. And so this is where the concept of bubble, the tulip mania as they call it, this is the concept of an investment bubble. This is where it came from. Unfortunately, many people lost their entire livelihood in this crash. Now, you don't need to be a scientist to figure out that this has happened repeatedly since 1600 to now, just that it's different things across a period of time, whatever trend is in. And so unfortunately for people, we are not Bill Gates, we are not Warren Buffett, we have lots of people to help us to invest the money. When you start seeing these types of crazes, we usually see it about here, because everyone has already made all the money, and then you get to here, and then it's, and then it goes down. So this type of investing is called speculation, because they speculate that the price will continue to go up. So I'm going to give you some tips here, just practical tips, on the difference between speculation and investment. Okay? Speculation's on the left, investment's on the right. Number one, speculation is usually short term, it's not long term. We're talking days to weeks. Now, for most of us in the room, we don't do investing as a day job. We have our own day jobs. So, I'm not sure about you, but I don't have time all day, every day of the week to look at my investment and check whether it's doing up or down, left or right, and whether I should sell or buy. That's speculation. And usually they are high-risk, short-term trends based on emotion. Oh, Gordon bought it, Sam is buying it, I'm going to miss out. I better jump in now, right? Or Heinrich told me it's really good, I better take the advice because it's only available until tomorrow. Because the game is to make quick profits. You go in, you come out, you make the money. And then you go in again, and you come out, and you go in again. Investing is different. Investing is long-term wealth and growth. It's usually years to decades. No one likes this because it's so slow, right? It's moderate to low risk. The aim is to grow wealth over time. So when you're choosing investment types, are you speculating or are you investing? Does that make sense? Okay, so do you understand what you're investing in? Is it in line with your values? Is the investment sure or speculative? Is it within your acceptable risk threshold? Now, all of us have different risk thresholds, but something to realize is that you need to figure out what your risk threshold is. If you can't sleep at night, if you are in Bitcoin, don't buy it. Because you can't sleep at night. Buy you. Okay, number 3. Effectiveness analysis. Okay, there's 3 questions. This one's a little bit more technical. Can it beat inflation? Is it low cost? Is it diversified or balanced? Okay. Let me give you some example of what I mean by that. When you invest in life, nothing comes free. So investments often have things associated with them, costs and fees. There are investment fees, there are taxes, there are broker or management fees, there are performance fees, there are transaction charges. No one does this thing for free. What is the cost of investing? Well, Solomon has to feed someone, he has to pay the people, but then he also has to pay for the delivery, right? The the floating of the logs down the river. There's a cost involved in every investment. Likewise, there's a cost involved if you're trying to invest in your health, whether it's shoes, clothes, gym fees, whatever it may be, right? Podcast, training app, training plan, there's a fee. So what we are aiming to do is look for things, understand the investment, understand the risk, but also understand the costs and fees involved. Don't be blind to that and think, I can do this for free. No, there's no such thing. It's about understanding what that is, because you could lose some of your gains, your profits, on the fees. Number 2, this is a very simplistic explanation on inflation. Okay, this is not an economic seminar. I'm not an economist, but I'm just going to try and explain inflation. Inflation basically means that over time, what happens is that the price or the value of a single dollar in a currency, let's call it $1 decreases over time. So back in the 1960s, $25,000 was a lot of money. Today, it's still a lot of money, but it's not worth as much. And so over time, what we see is that inflation means that the price of things generally goes up because the currency value that we use, money, goes down over time. There are very few things that beat inflation. There are give you some examples of things that easily beat inflation or rise with they go up in value as time goes along. So something like musical instruments tend to always beat inflation. Musical instruments rarely lose value. The older the musical instrument, the more expensive it is, generally speaking. People in the orchestra, when they play the violin, it's more expensive, it's from 1800 than it is from 2025. Because the wood is aging, the sound is nicer, whatever. Wine is another example. Please don't take this as go out and buy musical instruments and go out and buy wine. But I'm just giving you examples of things that beat inflation easily, right? Gold is another example of a physical asset that generally beats inflation. Okay, so these are examples. And what we're trying to say is that when you're looking for an investment class, if you took your $10,000 and locked it into a cupboard and took it out 10 years later, it's not worth $10,000 anymore. That's what I'm trying to say. So we are looking for things that can at least beat inflation. Now, during COVID, you will see the inflation went crazy, and you in the newspaper, all about interest rates and inflation, all those types of things, because the economy crashed because of COVID. And back in the early 80s in Australia, the inflation was super, super high, and the interest rates were super high as well. So there's lots of different bits and pieces around this. But that suffice to say, the basic understanding is pick an investment that beats inflation if you're looking for something that can give you value, because it at least keeps value over time. Okay, the last one is diversification. Now, diversification is important because diversification is a way to minimize your risk by spreading out your investments over different types of classes. If a very simple word is, don't put all your investment eggs in one basket. Okay. That applies to everything in life. If you do too much of one thing, it's not good for you. Even in an investment in a relationship, I'm not talking about like partner relationship. I'm talking, and it's not diversification, you find 15 partners. I'm talking about if you're in a friendship, it has to be balanced, right? It has to be balanced. So what I'm trying to say is that don't go all in one, because if you lose something, you lose everything. Okay? In fact, Solomon gave us that principle. We looked at this in seminar number 2. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you know not what disaster may happen on earth. Even Solomon diversified. It wasn't like, okay, I'm just going to buy wood and olive oil. It was olive oil, wood, sheep, cow, goat, all sorts of things that he would invest in. Okay, wise investments. So think about that. So if Fred came to you tonight and said, I've got a deal for you, give me all your investment and put it here, you're going to double it by next month, do not listen to Fred. Diversify, okay? At least give some to Heinrich. You know? Yes. Think. So make sure that is important. So these days, if you look at your super fund, often the super funds would help you to do this. They will say this is a diversified basket. So if you're not so sure about what that means, you can just choose something where they balance it out. They put some in the bank, they put some in term deposit, they put some in the stock market, they put some in buying other things, asset, property, so on and so forth. They diversify for you. But if you are doing it yourself or thinking about doing it yourself, that's a very important concept. Number 4, value consideration. How much time does it take to manage? And what is my approach to liquidity? Most of us, for the first question, don't have time to manage our investments on a daily basis. If you do, you should be an investment manager. So the reality is, if the investment is sucking up all your time, it is going to divert your priority and resource away from things that are meaningful to you. So generally speaking, for most people, pick investments where it doesn't take a lot of time to manage. So I'm going to come back to the property example. If you have 5 houses and you are dealing with tenant complaints every day and running around trying to fix things and calling the rental agent and something is broken and you're thinking about every day about whether to buy or sell the house, the interest rate is going up or down. If it goes up, you've got your mortgage repayment goes up. If it goes down, it's better, blah, blah, blah. If you're constantly thinking about that, it's going to consume your entire life. That doesn't mean buying a house is not good. It may tick 1, 2, 3, but if it takes up all your time, there is always an opportunity cost to investment. So think about how much, not just time, but resource it's sucking up from you. Liquidity. Here's the next one. So liquidity is a fancy word for basically saying the ability to turn your asset into cash, the ability for you to sell, the ability for you to exit. For some investments, it is really hard to exit. Generally speaking, the higher the risk, the higher the return, the lower the liquidity. That's generally the rule. So if things go bad, you break an arm, you get cancer, please, I hope no one gets cancer, or something goes wrong, there's a rainy day, how you are able to exit your investments is really important. Because if you're not able to exit, it's really tricky. So you see what's happening. Some people are really struggling at the moment because of some of the things that are happening around the world with restrictions and trade and also and so forth to liquidize or to liquidate some of their investments because there's so many rules and regulations and they've gone into very complex structures. Remember early on we said the simpler, the easier. Part of that is understanding what is liquid. Cash is, generally speaking, the most liquid because if you need cash, you can go to the bank and take it out. Things like real estate, very liquid. If I have a house and you want to sell the house tomorrow, can you do that? It's quite hard, right? Because you got to go get the house ready, go to a real estate agent, you advertise it, you find a buyer, then the buyer still has 30 to 60 to 90 days to settle the house and then buy it over. So by the time you decide you want to sell the house, to actually sell the house, it's months. And what happens if you need that cash straight away? So I'm not, again, this is not a criticism of buying houses. This is not what I'm saying. But you just need to consider that component. How easy is it to liquidate? Okay, any questions? So go back to the framework. Purpose, alignment, risk assessment, effectiveness, value. I'm going to pause here for you guys to ask any questions, okay, or comments, because there's a lot of information to digest slowly. And I'm very happy, we can turn off the recording maybe, because if you need to ask specific questions about specific investments, not like, I have this stock, what should I do? No, that's not the, it's more like if there are specific questions that you have around classes or specific concepts around investment, very happy to answer that as well, before I finish off with explaining what we're going to do next.